It's just about how you should feel, that for some reason you feel good here because maybe this is your place. What is this connected to? Probably it's connected to being rooted here. I saw myself on TV in this episode speaking Ukrainian and I realized that's me. I saw myself from the side, how I speak Ukrainian, and I thought, yeah, that's really me. And this is cabbage. And you're like, cabbage? And I'm like, cabbage. Is cabbage what unites us all? And I'm like...
Ukrainians are known for their deep attachment to tradition, to customs, to what has been passed down to them by their grandfathers and great-grandfathers.
Rice is like a carbohydrate. They just don't have bread, so if we didn't have bread, we'd eat rice too. And if you put rice on top of salo and showed it to the world, everyone would say, wow.
What exactly was the fundamental problem with Soviet rule, with Russian rule, which effectively kept Ukraine oppressed and subjugated for such a very long time? They were the ones who replaced both traditions and dishes. And they created a kind of substitution. Hello, I'm Nicholas Iski, and this is Archetype of the Nation, a cultural project that explores the foundations of Ukrainian national identity, who we were, who we have become, and who we must and can be. We look for answers in folklore as well as in conversations with outstanding representatives of our nation. Today our guest is Yevhen Klopotenko, a renowned chef, restaurateur, creative entrepreneur, and promoter of Ukrainian cuisine. Good afternoon, Yevhen.
Hello there.
Each episode of our project is dedicated to one of the values that are characteristic of the Ukrainian people, and I would like to invite you to talk about a value such as rootedness. Rootedness is not the most commonly used word. We probably don't use it every single day, but it's a very apt and truly fitting word because it actually characterizes, I think, one of our most fundamental and deeply held values, which has helped us to survive through many difficult times. Because rootedness is, in fact, profoundly connected to the preservation of our unique culture and our very identity, our traditions, despite all the times of hardship that Ukrainians have gone through. While preparing this episode, we actually put together a brief explanation of what rootedness is and how we define it. Rootedness, in fact, can be described as the continuity of cultural forms, customs, beliefs and patterns of behavior that have been preserved and passed down from generation to generation, even during the most difficult periods in history. This concept of rootedness is also connected to the sense of belonging to a nation, the preservation and transmission of traditions, and in fact, to the identity that we are exploring in our project. And the very first question for you is, what does rootedness mean to you? How do you understand it?
You know, when I interact with you all the time, you somehow talk about certain things differently each time. Well, and not differently at the same time. For example, the word rootedness is never really present. I never truly considered it as a distinct value in itself. I would simply refer to it as continuity. But that's actually quite insightful and cool. You consistently manage to reveal new and fascinating aspects of something profoundly important for Ukraine. For me, this deep sense of rootedness is... I think here we need to look at the etymology of the word, like roots. The deeper the roots, the more they develop and expand. If you take, for example, a tree, it has roots, a big root system, powerful, and there are interactions happening between these roots, and it occupies such a territory. That's probably a metaphor for how profoundly I truly feel about it. It's utterly impossible to adequately describe, but it's probably like you have to genuinely feel that for some inexplicable reason you feel incredibly good and deeply comfortable here, perhaps because this truly is your destined and perfect place. What is this connected to? Probably it's connected to being rooted. I think that all these intricate processes, the transmission of information through our very own DNA, the genetic code, the collective social memory, as they often say, which we may not consciously remember, but which we still do remember. There are many things that describe this phenomenon, but I think for me it lies somewhere between tangible reality and abstract metaphysics. Something we can't yet fully study or precisely measure, but which we can feel. Roughly speaking, there are many things in this vast world that we simply cannot adequately describe or fully comprehend, in my humble opinion. But we come up with different names for these mysterious things, like with our ancient myths and all that. It's kind of like a way to describe the world. Yes, and rootedness, I think, is also a way to describe what we all feel in some way.
Yes, actually, rootedness really does come from the word root, and basically it's about traditions, to put it simply, and traditions are something that are always with us from childhood. So let's talk about your childhood.
Let's do it.
So there were traditions that were certainly present in your life, or rather they most definitely were, but what significant role did traditions truly play in your early childhood?
It seems to me that here, through my family, you can clearly see how the Soviet Union influenced, well, both the Russian Empire and the Soviet Union, how they influenced precisely this, well, this kind of form, the attempts to change the roots, like either to replace them or... And that's why in my childhood, well, it was kind of... My parents were kind of some sort of post-Soviet... Well, just an average, typical family, really. We didn't celebrate Christmas. There weren't any such traditions at all. That was primarily because we kind of lived in a, well, I don't know, in a world that was a bit unclear and somewhat ambiguous. And then my mom, she teaches at a school. She started teaching ethnology, and she began to learn a lot of things. Then she started to remember how it was for her in her own childhood. And she started a tradition for Christmas. We began to gather together and eat kutia, to prepare 20 dishes, make dumplings, and put different things inside them. That was one part of it. Then another part was that my dad taught me how to cook borshch, because his dad had taught him how to cook borshch. And there weren't many established traditions. They were all simply and utterly destroyed by the Soviet Union, but perhaps that was a significant problem, and maybe it was also a distinct plus, because I had, and still very much have, a profound desire. A deep desire to truly understand why some people had certain long-standing traditions, why it was so incredibly important to some individuals, while I personally had absolutely nothing at all. And I actually started searching, even began talking to my mom about it. She told me about this topic. She said that on Easter, her mother would bake a huge loaf of bread, then go and share that bread with everyone. And then she would bake a leg in clay of a goat or a pig, and you're just like... So it turns out that even my mom had some traditions in her childhood, but then they faded away so much that by the time it got to me, it was like I didn't have them anymore. But through my mom, I'm starting to understand a lot. My granddad, my dad's father, used to always say the word kandior, or you won't cook kandior, a kandior, a kandior. I always heard this word as kandior, but I never knew what it meant. And then when I started to look into it more deeply, just about a month ago, I was in Cherkasy region, where my dad is from. And it turns out that kandior is a dish similar to kulish. And somewhere it just happened to arrive in a family in Cherkasy region, and they say somehow, don't mess with the kandior means something like don't drink someone else's stuff, or kandior means something else too. But it's all about the dish. So it turns out that kandior was a dish, along with salamaka, kulish, kandior, and it came from right there. And many people called it just a simple basic porridge. And even my grandfather used to say that, though he himself didn't really understand it. The word itself was passed down to my father. Dad never seen the dish. So when I returned to Cherkasy region, I showed him how to cook it. We went to the place where he was born, and I showed him how to cook kandior. So, here's the thing. It turns out that these echoes, traditions, they truly tried to get rid of them, destroy them. But in reality, they were so deeply rooted through these words, through certain phrases, through certain things. And that's why I didn't have that in my childhood. And that's precisely why now I'm truly discovering. And now I try to cook various dishes for Christmas and fully understand how Christmas was traditionally celebrated and why. Some specific things that won't be used anymore because they used to be like that, but now people define them quite differently. I try to make Christmas so that it feels Ukrainian, but also is interesting for today, like the Malanka processions, what needs to be done for Easter. For the Independence Day, for example, we started a tradition of sharing pies. And that's kind of, well, there are a lot of things like that which really Only now am I starting to live through these traditions, and it's like finding something that was lost. That's precisely why I've always felt a deep and undeniable connection with the past, a sense of history that resonated within me, but I could never truly articulate or express it. I mean, I just always inherently knew, even though I spoke Russian, that I was definitely a direct and meaningful continuation of something much larger, something profoundly Ukrainian.
By the way, regarding the topic of the Russian language, you actually mentioned that your family spoke Ukrainian, then you started speaking Russian, and later switched back to speaking Ukrainian.
Yes.
Was that a conscious transition, or was it something in your genes, or how did it happen for you?
Well, actually, on television, the law that was originally enacted in 2016 worked exceptionally well. And I truly think that even now, we absolutely need to keep making new laws in that very same spirit. The kind of legislation that specifically said there should be 80% Ukrainian content on television, or perhaps 70%. And back then, all the hosts were Russian-speaking. They asked, so who here speaks Ukrainian? I said, I do. And everyone was like, well, it was just me and maybe one other person, and that was it. So they said, well, then we'll give you the main role, and I became the host. And I just went ahead and switched. And when I saw it for the first time, I had filmed. Then 3 or 4 months passed and the program aired. I saw myself on TV in that episode speaking Ukrainian, and I realized that's me. I saw sides of myself speaking Ukrainian, and I thought that's really me. So why am I speaking Russian then? I was like, what's the deal? Well, that's not me. I just needed to see myself from the outside, and that was it. And then there was this process, difficult, long, but well, that's how it was.
And here's a truly interesting point about the deep-rootedness of these very roots and the continuity of these roots. Did they truly pass on to you, or did you discover them thanks to your parents, in particular? Traditions and a love for Ukrainian dishes, for borshch, for example, the Christmas traditions, you learned about them by talking with your parents?
Well, yes, a little bit, in particular.
Is it truly possible to completely lose your sense of rootedness and then ultimately find it again? Or does it have to always be with you somehow?
I think that it is simply passed on. You can just simply explore it and then nurture it, truly love it very much indeed, cherish it deeply and profoundly, or you can simply, really not pay attention to it. That's all there is to it. I think everyone definitely has it. It might take its own forms, have its own kind of level. It's just like exploring your past, exploring your roots. It's really not difficult. It's possible. That is, you clearly understand where you're from, who you are, what you're like, and that's it. It's a super cool thing. And then when you start exploring, everything just falls into place right away. And you really feel that finally this continuity has been restored, and many people have never even thought about it. But as soon as they do, they become different people. Well, the people they were meant to be, and that's really cool. It's like a kind of reference point. You can blur it, but you can't forget it, because it lives inside you.
Which Ukrainian tradition is the closest to you? Maybe a holiday tradition.
Traditions? Which one is the closest?
Or which one do you like the most?
Man, well, that's just... Well, I truly think that hospitality, is that a cherished tradition or is it simply just a thing? But I genuinely think that's what I like the very most. Because wherever you may go, people will immediately set the table for you. And then for New Year's at my place, like I was at Christmas, we celebrated Christmas, and then it was New Year's, and I got a call from my friends. We'll come to your place. I said that I didn't want to do anything. Don't come over. I didn't want to do anything. They said, we'll be there in an hour. I'm like, ugh, fine. And they show up in an hour, and I have like 10 dishes ready. I'm standing there actually thinking, why did I even do this? They came in for 5 minutes. There's just something in my head. I think it's one of the important traditions. When someone comes over, you treat them. It's something truly powerful, giving away your very last, sharing generously. That's precisely what I consistently observe. Because wherever I may go, it's the one constant, truly unshakable thing in every single region. I went to visit my grandmother. She's 95 years old. She lives in the north of Zhytomyr region, in Overkh area, somewhere in a village there. Kobylinsky or Kobyliake, something like that. She doesn't just host, she cooked me 8 dishes in pots from the oven. I say, well, how could I possibly do otherwise? Well, maybe it's some kind of behavioral pattern, I truly don't know. But that's precisely what I like, probably because it's the most sincere, the most authentic, the most important.
Another tradition after the feast is the tradition of singing. You probably often encounter this tradition too when you go on expeditions. Do you sing yourself?
I haven't gotten to that point yet, to be honest. I think that many traditions, they reflected the spirit of those times. Well, what else is there to do? Everyone's eaten, so what now? Well, let's all sing then. And that's normal. Or if it was the traditional Ivana Kupala, then absolutely everyone would gather together. It was truly like a magnificent and joyous party, with everyone openly flirting with each other, creating a wonderfully vibrant atmosphere. Now we take all these traditions and kind of make them more fundamentalist. Only this way is allowed. But actually, I think the purpose of singing was simply what else was there to do. As soon as everyone started singing, it was a way to communicate, to talk, to share problems, joys, and jokes. And that's cool. Now probably there's no such need anymore.
Now everyone's on their phones?
Just sitting. Yeah, on their phones, on TV, on television. And maybe that's not so bad. And that's definitely not going to change. But I guess there needs to be some kind of mix. I just often thought it was cool. But I think I start to feel sad about a lot of songs when everyone sings. Usually you'd sit down and be in a romantic mood and you wouldn't feel sad. But I really do feel sad. And when someone starts singing, I just kind of, well, maybe I need to work through that, but I haven't gotten to it yet. But it's super important to preserve this and pass it on in some format. In what exact way, I do not know yet, but it is very important indeed.
By the way, speaking of folklore, and just jumping ahead a little bit, there's this fascinating phenomenon in the realm of folklore, which is precisely why it's even called folklore, or folk art for that matter. There is no identical song and no identical fairy tale, because every performer, every storyteller tells something of their own. And it's the same with dishes, because every hostess has her own borshch, and 100%, absolutely true. Everyone has their own dish.
That's exactly how it is. But this wonderful tradition of singing, as I always say, it truly... Whenever someone sings, I just really want to listen intently, especially when there are such incredibly beautiful songs that people are a little... the humorous ones. There are a lot of them, they're very risque but really funny, but for some reason they're embarrassed to sing them. At first, people always sing something like, well, something about a girl, something sad, something else. But the really funny ones are for those who are ready, so there's a lot of everything there.
We couldn't avoid the topic of borshch in our episode because borshch is, in fact, also borshch is probably one of the elements of our traditions and our rootedness. And if we look at the whole wide world, we certainly know the truly popular dishes of different nations, which in some significant way clearly identify a particular nation. For example, pasta and pizza, we all know that's unmistakably Italy, sushi is definitely Japan, and delicious burgers are undeniably the USA. In Ukraine, borshch is already recognized as UNESCO cultural heritage, and you, in fact, have put a lot of effort into popularizing Ukrainian cuisine, and borshch in particular. Why borshch specifically?
Well, I truly think that borshch is a very delicious dish that reflects who we are.
We are all different, but united in borshch. And it's really cool that we all eat different, yet the same borshch. So it turns out that everyone has their own version, but it's still the same borshch. And that's the coolest thing. When you realize that you might argue with someone, but then they go home, you go home, and you both eat borshch. And that's the funny thing, because it means it unites us in a single event. That's if you put it that way. If you go a little deeper, of course, right now I am actively researching, and it's truly important for me to explore the historical roots of borshch. But most likely, we are slowly coming to the conclusion that, well, how exactly should I put it? It is indeed. Right now, I want to connect the continuity of Kievan Rus and food to understand what it was like in Kievan Rus, how it evolved with the introduction of new products, with changes in technology, with changes... cataclysms and other things, and what we have now as a result, and what this continuity is. Obviously, the very first borshch is definitely not what we have now. What is known now is that it was some kind of boiled kvass, with the addition of various greens available at the time, or boiled water with basically fermented hogweed. It's like there is an inedible harmful one and there is a harmless one. I'm still figuring this out completely. But in fact, well, imagine there was nothing Then they carefully selected some ingredients, added them to a pot of water, meticulously cooked the mixture, and subsequently called this hearty creation borshch. According to one theory that we have now, it is still just a theory. But if you take the word borshch, the word borshch means a sprout. And we know that the sounds like st always transformed into sh in our language. So it turns out that if you have st transformed into sh, then it becomes borshch, not borshch, but borshch. And that's one of the theories, that if these sprouts were thrown into water, boiled and eaten.
So it's a stew made from sprouts?
Well, we still currently can't confirm this. So far, what we know is that the oldest reference, literally just a month ago, we found from the year 1400, but we will definitely go further and find more. But what is this all about? Why is it important? Because there's water? Well, it could have been just water. Something was added to it, and it was called borshch. And later it evolved, and then potatoes appeared in the recipe, and that's how the phenomenon of green borshch came about. Well, this sprout probably transformed there, and eventually it became green borshch, which we still have in our traditional cuisine. And then we transformed this green borshch into red borshch, because the beets came to us, potatoes came to us, tomatoes came to us. To be honest, 95% of what we now call Ukrainian borshch actually came to us from elsewhere. And we're like, okay, that's fine. We accept all of it and still call it borshch. So if we're talking about the fundamentals, what's important is that it's just something cooked in water. That was borshch, more or less, unless it was porridge. And just imagine, this is something that's been around for thousands of years, and it's always been with us, with our different generations, in one form or another, with different ingredients, with different foods, with different things, but it's still borshch. And you realize that's where its importance lies. And it's important that we, first and foremost, understand this, but we have this imposed inferiority complex. Now, it seems like it's starting to fade a bit, or maybe it's already faded, though it's hard to say. I think not yet. Well, anyway, that's a separate topic. But it turns out that we could never love something, well, we couldn't before, until it was recognized by the world. And as soon as UNESCO recognized borscht, we started making it. Our attitude toward it began to change. Until it happens abroad, nothing. Well, that's always how it is. If you want to say that Yevhen is a great chef, he has to feed someone from another country. As soon as you open a new place abroad, you're super cool and impressive. If you go abroad and really do something there, wow, you're truly quite awesome. Here, I truly do about a full 100 times more. No one ever really sees you or truly appreciates you. But as soon as you step out somewhere, it's like some kind of extra layer we have. It stretches back from earlier times. As soon as borscht became known, everyone started saying, wow, I'm not just eating a dish, I'm eating something special. UNESCO heritage, borscht, this is important. And he was recognized in the world, we should recognize. Well, it's kind of... So it was super important. Well, after that, maybe 25 to 30 dishes were added to the intangible cultural heritage list of Ukraine, but before that there were none, and there wasn't even a procedure. And then, in all the regions, in all the small local communities, they started reviving all of this. So it really got things started. Well, our flagship dish, it did its job. We started to love it more, to change everything for it, and now we can talk about it as... It's not just about food, it's something fundamental. And this will truly be our unique calling card. It's our very own distinctive culture. Even if we talk about delicious Neapolitan pasta, which is about pizza, which is famously from Naples, then it's a bit younger. Maybe, I don't know, it's about 300 to 400 years old, well, maybe 500. I don't remember when Marco Polo went to China, but it started around that time. Well, just imagine, it turns out that our particular dish is so incredibly fundamental, and it's so much older and significantly more important to us than many other well-known dishes that are recognized around the entire world.
In your opinion, which Ukrainian dishes are underrated and also deserve to be talked about around the world?
There are hundreds of them. Cherry vareniki, because I think everyone eats sweet cherries, not sour cherries. And they often call them delicious cherries. Borshch, in my opinion, are truly underrated. That's Crimean Tatar cuisine. This is something fundamentally beautiful. Or sirniki. But to be honest, I don't even know the origin of sirniki because I'm trying to find it. They weren't mentioned in the 16th and the 18th century. There are no memories of it. But there was always cheese. It was called nabil. That's why I think cottage cheese and working with it is completely underrated. If I start talking, I won't... You've thrown me into my favorite topic. I could talk to you about this for a very long time, but in the world, I wouldn't want the world to talk too much about Ukrainian cuisine. At this stage, let everyone eat borshch and know about it. That's enough. If you throw out 100 dishes at once, oh, just give me one. It's easier for me to figure it out. And
What do people say about borshch when
do they taste it? No? Well, everyone is shocked, of course. Well, because, it's a bit strange for Italians. They don't eat beets. And, in warm countries, our dish seems a bit odd to them. I was just telling this story recently, and I laughed to myself imagining how everyone boils beets, takes them out, drains the water, peels the beets, and eats the beets. But we basically boil the beets and then eat the water. Everyone else drains that water, but we eat it. For people, it's a new discovery, new emotions, a whole new spectrum of everything. In northern countries, they certainly eat beets, but they've truly never had them in this particular form. For them, it's quite cool. It's like if you took herring, for example, and ate it with milk here in Ukraine. You definitely say, but in Denmark, it's a tradition, it's normal, and everyone is, wow, and it's the same. Milk, herring, and you're like, we'll forbid this, we don't need that. But if you try it and say, wow, that's cool, it's the same for them. They know all ingredients, you cook them, and they're like, wow, that's really something.
it's about a certain uniqueness of a nation?
100%, that's 100%, that's 100%. Really, it's not ramen, which is incredibly popular worldwide, but it's definitely getting there in very big strides. Someday we'll certainly take our rightful place next to ramen, I truly think. Or perhaps ramen will take its place right next to us. Well, it's going to be something quite remarkable. It's really something quite extraordinary.
While exploring Ukrainian traditions, another important point is the similarity of traditions in different parts of Ukraine. That is, it's something that unites us. There was a particular moment that truly struck me. Not so much struck as it really intrigued me. I read a study by Fedor Vovk, an ethnographer who wrote a book at the beginning of the 20th century. In it, he described the structure of houses, and he concluded that all the houses had the same layout and the same arrangement of furniture of that time, so to speak. And this was regardless of where the house was located, whether in Western Ukraine or Eastern Ukraine, they all had the same layout. I then remembered how I had been in different houses in various regions of Ukraine and realized that it was indeed true. Even now, this layout is preserved down to the smallest detail. That is, where the cupboard is, where the stove is, where the bench and the table are, everything is exactly the same. While researching regional dishes and going on expeditions, did you find anything that unites everyone, something distinctly Ukrainian?
In food?
In food.
Well, that's actually my job right now. Another one. That's exactly what I'm working on at the moment. Well, this is going to sound strange now, and it's not obvious at all, but it's cabbage. And you're like, cabbage? And I'm like, cabbage? Is cabbage what unites us all? And I'm like, well, I just can't quite figure it out at all. But look, it's important to understand that nalesniki, a traditional dish, are indeed typically made using tender and fresh cabbage leaves as their primary wrapper. Bread was placed on a cabbage leaf. A delicious dish, and sometimes fresh cabbage is added to borshch. In many northern regions, the dish is baked cabbage in the oven. In Chernihiv region, it's called husak. In Volyn, it's called sniadanska kapusta, breakfast cabbage. It's also called that when you put cabbage in the oven overnight, then take it out, slice it, and eat it. And you're like, Cherkasy region, Dnipropetrovsk region, Kirovorad region, kapusniak. Basically, it's millet, it's kulesh with cabbage, and later with tomatoes. Sauerkraut is a traditional fermented food that is widely eaten in all regions. And you're like, holubtsi, that's a delicious dish made with cabbage. In Odessa, specifically within the Odessa region, they are well known for cooking various delightful cabbage dishes there. People mix cabbage leaves with corn grits. In Halikaina, they make small holubtsi. In the north, they're huge. They make holubtsi from sauerkraut, vegetarian, with potatoes. In the north, it's all about potatoes. But again, it's cabbage. There's a dish called kapusta, cabbage. That's what it was called. Back then, if it was pea soup, there was no word soup. That's French. They said peas. And the dish was called beetroot. This is borshch. Someone called beets simply. Well, that's what it was called. Therefore, cabbage is a dish. Just such a dish. Am I like this seriously? And you start like this. And now I need a little more time. But not carrots, because carrots used to be wild, small and white. What we eat now has probably only been around for about 150 years. Carrots are almost nowhere to be found. I don't come across carrots as an ingredient. Nowhere. In the Tale of Bygone Years and all the later articles I read, there's no mention of carrots as carrots. Onions. Cabbage is there. And you're like, cabbage? Well, for me, it's definitely millet and cabbage. Those are the two, and lard, okay? Well, millet and cabbage, these are truly the two fundamental things that genuinely unite all our diverse regions. Because historically, before the widespread introduction of potatoes, millet was indeed the primary and most significant carbohydrate source. And now, practically everyone consumes potatoes everywhere, but previously, instead of potatoes, they exclusively ate millet. And as soon as potatoes arrived, millet started to be thrown out. And that's why there's baked or roasted dishes, because before there was kulish, which had millet in it, they replaced it with potatoes. And then there are some people who are conservative, so they just started making millet with potatoes. In the north, this is called hartanachka. There, the same kapustniak is made with millet and cabbage. Millet with fresh potatoes. For example, there are savory dumplings with millet. These are dumplings with millet. Some make them with potatoes, some with millet. It's kind of... So these two fundamental things, I truly believe, are two essential ingredients that really unite us all. Almost every single region across the globe has something quite similar to this.
Sounds like a slogan. Ukrainians are united by...
Cabbage? Yes, Ukrainians are united by cabbage and borshch, which we put cabbage into. Cabbage, which we put into borshch.
The prominent Ukrainian historian and ethnographer Mykola Kostomarov noted back in the 19th century that Ukrainians are distinguished by a deep attachment to tradition, to custom, to what has been passed down to them by their grandfathers and great-grandfathers. And in fact, these ancient traditions have been preserved since very old pre-Christian times. Yevhen Klopotenko wrote about this, meaning this is still mythology, which was transformed through syncretism with Christianity, resulting in a new folk religion. This folk religion is very closely connected with the cult of ancestors. And you probably know that kutia is not just a festive dish, it's also a memorial dish, koliva, which is eaten, in fact.
Of course, yes. Well, kutia is generally thought to be one of the very first dishes that existed. And it was simply wheat, boiled wheat, that's what they ate. Later, the addition of various ingredients became a thing. Kind of a luxury, you know? Well, and the evolution of humanity as... Like, people settled down. Well, in short, as people began to settle in one place, they started growing wheat. Then they started growing other things and adding them all to the wheat. That's why there's an opinion that kutia is actually the truly oldest and most very ancient and traditional of our dishes.
The Archetype of the Nation is created with the support of the Ukrainian Cultural Foundation and is released in various formats. So choose the one you like, listen, watch, read our episodes. And also share your thoughts in the comments, because in this project, every opinion matters. And of course, subscribe to our channels and pages so you don't miss anything interesting. All the links are in the description for this episode. Speaking of these traditions and their preservation, over the centuries they have in fact been maintained and passed down almost unchanged. And probably it is precisely thanks to this constancy that this rootedness, this continuity was ensured. But in our truly dynamic and ever-changing times, when everything is constantly evolving, we perpetually need to develop the economy, culture, and the state itself, and perceptions and technologies are always evolving and progressing. In fact, it seems there is an opinion that even traditions need to be adapted somehow. And the question is it even possible to renew traditions?
Absolutely. I personally do this for myself. I don't want to... Well, there are a lot of things that need to be done. Well, they kind of... Well, it's like a jug. You put it somewhere, but if you don't use it, that's it. It will just disappear. Wait 40 to 50 years, and it'll just stand there like a museum piece. And that's how everything disappears. A tradition is something that reflects its time, and you reach back to the past. That's why you need to... Imagine yourself singing karaoke, specifically Ukrainian songs, at various community events. Then, it's as if you are truly continuing that rich and vibrant tradition. You're still singing, but in the format that exists now. But it's actually the same style, indeed. I'm absolutely certain that in the past, the church was very fundamentally important. Well, not just the church itself, but faith, or, religion, was truly and deeply important because it was a central place. Well, you would come to all these significant holidays like the temple festival or other important church holidays. And just imagine, what else did people really have to do with their time? All these holidays or weddings, which were so important, or other events, because back then it was a chance to come, to talk to someone. People didn't work 5 days a week with 2 days off. There was a different approach to work, to everything. And if no one is working in the temple, why is no one working? I'm tired of working. And everyone knows that now you can truly let loose and unwind. But now you might work on Monday until around 6 in the evening, then perhaps go to a cozy cafe, and somehow you've already begun to feel completely relaxed and at ease. It wasn't like that before. That's truly why all these holidays and events were indeed so very important. And the church was also a place where everyone could come, not just for matters of faith. They could also socialize there. And it's like, well, you prayed, did the ritual, and you even get to socialize. So that's why it was such a great place. You know, it was where everyone would gather, like, I don't know, nowadays when everyone goes to the gas station, well, before COVID, everyone would go to the gas station, grab a coffee, sit there at 10 p.m., buy snacks and chat. Well, it's essentially the very same thing. It's just, you know, kind of like a similar concept, really. Like with churches, you can't change anything, that's the rule. But actually, back then it required time. Now it doesn't require time anymore. But back then, you absolutely had to change all that. To do things like, for example, the koza mumming tradition. That was really quite cool. But can we realistically walk a koza now? Somehow make it so that I genuinely want to walk it. But how exactly am I supposed to walk a koza? What in the world is that even supposed to mean? Well, it's unclear. Or do malenka, that's really cool, dressing up, singing some ancient traditional songs. But you can dress up, that's the main thing, and you can adapt it a bit, so it's easier for me to experience it now. Because if I have to learn 25 songs, I just won't do it, because I don't want to. If they tell me, go and shout whatever you want, play your own role, it's like theater without songs. And then it's really cool. And you're like, wow. Or take Easter, for example. You don't even know the rules, what you're supposed to do there. And when you know these rules, you can adapt them in your own way and do it. And that's super important, truly. Not to fundamentally change established traditions, but rather to put a unique piece of yourself into them. They naturally change and evolve over the course of time, you know, quite significantly. But why actually over time? Because during this time there are people who carry out these traditions. But then the forms change. One last thing I'll say. For example, if at Christmas you're supposed to have 12 fasting dishes. That's such an ancient tradition. So why do people put potatoes there now? Well, that means when it appeared 250 years ago, people started adding it. And before that, it wasn't there. And that's already a change in tradition, right? It's a change in dishes, but it's still traditions influenced by time and changes in the environment. So that's exactly what it is. And there, if you look at the details, some things are allowed to be changed, but some are not. You can change whatever you want, but the main thing is the feeling. To gather together, to talk. There are a lot of such things. And that's exactly what needs to be done, so that it will continue to live. As soon as you start to do boring, uninteresting things that are no longer relevant, then nothing will work.
Probably, in our time, the problem lies a bit in technology, because before, socialization required personal interaction, but now you can do it in the comments, immediately discuss the video you're watching, communicate with each other, and of course, leave a like. But there's also the significant question of how to truly find an appropriate balance between authenticity and reinterpretation. When preserving and popularizing a tradition, how do you diligently maintain that balance?
You don't. Traditions don't care about what you and I are talking about. They just go on and change. That's it. You can't change a tradition. That's the thing. A tradition is what it is. Traditionally, that's how it was, and that's how it stayed. You can just, well, you can't really do anything. We can talk about it, but who is supposed to maintain the balance? Me? Or why maintain a balance? You know, it's like the question, how do you keep the balance? I don't know. Everyone does as they wish. Tradition is about roots, it's what you feel. You can dress up as Malanka, whatever you truly want, change all the established rules, and absolutely do it if that's what you genuinely find fun and enjoyable. But you know it's from Malanka, it's a cherished tradition, you're still doing it during this specific period. And I'm like, I'll definitely do it this particular way, but I am doing the very same thing. The goal isn't to repeat it perfectly. It's like with embroidered shirts. People still don't wear them every day. In the past, people wore regular clothes and put on embroidered shirts for special occasions. But now you can make embroidered shirts and wear them every day. And that's how you should dress. You shouldn't treat it as something... Sometimes people tell me, take it off. Today we're filming a Ukrainian recipe. Put on an embroidered shirt. I say, why? Well, because it is indeed a very significant symbol. I say, well, yes, it is truly a powerful symbol. But for me, it's not a symbol. It's everyday clothing. And that's wow. I have some things that aren't for every day and some that are for every day. And it stops being just that. It truly becomes much deeper and more meaningful because you actually live with it, not just simply take it out for Flag Day or Independence Day or even Vyshyvanka Day. That's certainly cool too. But what's really truly cool is to deeply feel this rich tradition, to actually use it, to actively do something significant with it. Well,
Yeah.
I don't think there's a balance. None of us can really upset any balance because everyone has to do everything. The main thing for us is to preserve the tradition and pass it on. But how? You study them, see how they were, and then do it your own way. That's it.
I guess in today's modern world, it's also incredibly important that you actually genuinely enjoy it. Like, how exactly do you get young people truly interested, or how do you effectively explain it to foreign visitors when there's significant competition? Traditions, in essence, are also competing now because everything is about content. There's a huge amount of content. And if you're presenting something, some traditions, then one way or another, you're creating content. Content packaging. Content competes with other content. And the question is how to interest young people and show them that this isn't something old. That it's not just grandmas, grandpas, the 19th century, or Kievan Ruses. Not everyone is interested in history. But we understand that traditions, rootedness are important. And we need to somehow get the younger generation interested in these traditions.
Well, yes. You simply cannot get someone truly interested or deeply engaged with boring, unexciting, or utterly joyless things, can you? So I definitely think it should be like... Well, it should be like Halloween. It's not a tradition because it's just a really fun interaction, and it truly suits everyone. Everyone does it. And for us, caroling is kind of like something that is a cherished tradition. Something unclear, like someone's just going around begging for money. But that's not really the case. It's... Well, but... Right now, we are truly in a time when we're actively rethinking many traditions. Some will certainly stay, some will undoubtedly go, but something new and important will definitely come of it. So the main thing is to talk about them, the main thing is to keep doing them, and whatever happens with them, we'll figure it out later.
Let me remind you that today in the studio of the Archetype of the Nation project, we're talking about rootedness with Yevhen Klopotenko. If you imagine Ukraine in 50 or maybe even 100 years, a little moment of futurism, in your opinion, which traditions will definitely remain?
Weddings. Weddings will definitely remain. Funerals will definitely remain. Christmas will definitely remain. And Easter will definitely remain. Well, those will definitely stay.
But if we talk about weddings, they're already nothing like they were 100 years ago, because back then it was a whole... No. There were 3 consecutive stages, like...
That's just how it seems to you. A lot of people... Well, I have an acquaintance who's getting married, and she's been busy with the wedding for 2-3 months now, organizing it. It's kind of funny. Well, it's not like it used to be. And that's totally fine. But this tradition will remain. There will be more, whether it's changed or not, it will definitely stay. Will something like this exist in the same form as it does now?
Well, Malanka, for example.
Well, Malanka, I think right now, I truly think that it's not yet widely known enough to definitively say for sure that it will actually stay. I think it will disappear, not remain. Like, many cherished traditions will appear for now. They will be truly revived. They will certainly gain their inherent strength. But I think we genuinely need to talk about this more pragmatically and realistically. Christmas and Easter are fundamentally about the church. They're a powerful social glue. They've been deeply ingrained in people's minds for hundreds of thousands of years. Well, the institutional church has been in people's minds for only about 2,000 years. But still, you simply can't just ban or fundamentally change all that in merely 100 years, I truly think, because it's such a profoundly fundamental fundamentality, this deep-seated faith.
And in fact, the Christian religion, For 1,000 years. Pre-Christian beliefs lasted even longer, for thousands of years, and in fact, they have also survived despite everything.
Well, I truly think that, I genuinely believe that the traditions which truly correspond to the spirit of the current times will certainly remain. For example, some ancient tradition like obzinki, the significant harvest festival, and all that. Now, who even really knows when it is? I'm not telling you specifically, but I say, let's go at the very end of August again, something about the bountiful harvest when they finally finish it. You know, they kind of stick to the middle, like the match is completely over. I'm like, what do you truly mean? You see how deeply involved you are in this harvest. I think that the things like that will remain, but also I truly believe that the war brings along a lot of different changes. It introduces a great number of its own adjustments. Here, somehow all of this will be mixed together.
In fact, most of our very well-known and cherished traditions have been preserved primarily thanks to the rich tapestry of folklore, because they were passed down both in traditional ritual songs and, let's say, in captivating stories, in enchanting fairy tales. Folk wisdom was passed down in proverbs and sayings. I know that, in fact, you were inspired by mythology when creating your dishes. That I know. What else inspires you, if anything at all? Have you been inspired by any other folklore works or specific folklore genres in your creative work? What inspires you in your artistic endeavors?
Myths are a very powerful thing. It's really cool. It contains so many different codes. You can search for them, you can compare them. It's something extraordinary. What else inspires me? Well, the fish danced with the crayfish, the parsley with the parsnip. That's a song that no one knows where it came from. They say it was first heard in a movie, but no one... The Cossacks, I forgot what it's called. And before that, whether it existed, the lost
letter.
Ah, the lost letter, that's right. But honestly, I can't tell you if there's a lot of food in folklore. No, I don't think I'm food. Is this folklore or is it... Well, it's not exactly folklore, but it kind of looks like folklore on the page. Well, this is actually the fundamental work that made me start doing everything and reviving things. And everything else? Well, I'm not inspired by some... I don't know how to explain it properly. What is folklore? Is it songs? Songs, fairy tales, proverbs, sayings? I'm just not really... Fairy tales are really indeed more about a particular way of life. What about rituals, perhaps? Rituals, yes. For example, we started making oil from calamus. Calamus is served at the Zana festival. Well, what is that? That's probably rituals, of course, yes. We're talking about... You see, if we talk about myths, they're like people, characters who live. And you can, around these characters, by how they live, understand what they eat, where they live. And if you talk about some kind of dream spirit, then you can understand that it affects your sleep. And then you can start gathering certain plants, looking for them in the forest, ones that affect your sleep, and make something from them. But when someone just made up a fairy tale, and you're like, what are you supposed to do with that fairy tale? Why would you actually need it? Sometimes it can be... If a myth is, in fact, half true, half false, or just true, then a fairy tale is, in all likelihood, mostly not true at all.
A myth explains the world, and a fairy tale, they say, is a fragment of a myth. That's how I put it.
That it seems to me that myths are very fundamental to me, and there's a lot of information encoded in them. And in the other thing, it's just some fragments, like a single song or a certain dance. But if it's a dance, for example, there's the Kryva-Kryvi dance. There's also a song called Krivi Zaychik, Crooked Bunny. But still, how can I extract any information from this Krivi Zaychik? It's hard for me. Myths are probably the only thing. They're very powerful and strong, and everything else is... Well, everything else... Songs are also more about... Well, we do have songs about that, of course. But in folklore, in some song-related food, I probably haven't really looked for it. Even if I had found something, it would have been some kind of popular dishes like, do you want some dumplings, that kind of thing. There are also proverbs and sayings, and that's where you can sometimes find something. I do look there occasionally. Don't overdo it, it's like not over-salting. And there too you can build a lot of layers on top of that. There are also molfars, by the way, though that's not strictly folklore in the traditional sense, but still, the molfar traditions, how they skillfully work with nature, how they carefully use various herbs, how they meticulously do all of that. That's also a really powerful source where I can truly get inspired and genuinely look for certain specific things.
You brought up proverbs and sayings at just the right time because now it's time for our traditional game with the guest, the folklore chest. And today in this folklore chest, we actually have proverbs and sayings. And what will the game be about? I'll start a proverb, and you have to finish it.
I will play this game.
Either the traditional way, or you can come up with something of your own.
All right, let's do it.
Let's do it. As the root, so is the
Peel. Probably.
Remember the old and the new?
Cherish.
Our parents used to say, "What do you need with cracklings?"
Porridge.
Without salt, without bread, there is no...
These are exactly my topics. I don't know them. There is no borscht without salt and bread.
Almost. There is no lunch. When there is a breadbasket, paradise under willow tree.
Paradise.
And now about borscht. Eat borscht with mushrooms. Hold your tongue.
Behind your teeth.
And without the willow and the viburnum, there is no...
Ukraine.
That's right. Let's go back a bit to the questions about folklore and inspiration. You often go on expeditions, you search for dishes, but I'm sure that there you actually see the traditions and you hear folklore, and you probably also witness rituals. And probably they also truly inspire you in some significant way and allow you to later convey these deeply rooted and cherished traditions in your important work and to the wider world in general to proudly promote Ukraine.
Well, yes. Well, they're like that. Yes, it's also heavy. Well, it's not... That's precisely how it truly is. My extensive expeditions are, in fact, a truly big, wide-ranging and extensive undertaking, an in-depth ethnographic endeavor. And first and foremost, these are all different periods of time when I actually go there. There was never a chance to really understand how it differs or how it is inspired. You'd have to be in all the regions at the same time. But that's not how it works. So in one region I have one time and one tradition, in another, a different time and tradition. Somewhere they pray before eating, somewhere they do nothing, somewhere they just don't care, somewhere there's something else. In some places, the man actually has to be the first to enter the apartment or something like that. And in each place, if you start digging, there's so much going on. And these traditions, these rules, of course, they inspire me. But I like the way I think about it. There is food. Sitting at the table and eating is something fundamental. And all the traditions seem to revolve around the table. Either after or before, or somehow they all lead to the table anyway. So for me, like, finding food is what I'm looking for, and everything else is just, little extras, like add-ons to everything. Well, like kutia with halva, that's something quite interesting and rather unique we had at Christmas that I personally discovered. Well, it's kind of cool, but the truly unique way they serve it, you absolutely have to throw a spoonful of kutia at the ceiling so it actually sticks. Well, it's kind of like something happens with the food, and that's inspiring. Not in creating dishes, but overall, it's inspiring. The nation, the people, how they interact with each other, how everyone has their own thing, their own rules. It's awesome.
Blitz round. 7 short questions and 7 short or not so short answers provided for discussion.
All right.
What trait do you really value the most in people?
Is kindness considered a character trait?
Yes.
Well, then definitely kindness. Well, kindness is the most important thing. If you're kind at every stage and on every level. So, kindness.
What trait do you consider the worst?
The absolute worst trait, in my considered opinion, is undoubtedly vanity. It's essentially being excessively conceited. This is when you meticulously do everything, not for genuine reasons, but solely to proudly proclaim, look at just how truly great and superior I am. Basically, it's ego. You simply can't live without it. But very often, this ego is truly the source of many problems, devastating wars, and all sorts of other negative things. And most major scandals are more about ego or sheer vanity.
What inspires you?
People. As strange as it may indeed sound, they sometimes annoy me. But they truly inspire me when they come up and sincerely say thank you for what you do, or just come up, smile, or share something meaningful, like in the various regions. When you cook for people, they say thank you, and you say, well, I'll keep cooking, nothing will stop me. It's a rather strange and unique form of gratitude, like when people are truly sincere and genuinely kind, they come up to you and thoughtfully say something meaningful to you. Then I'm not alone in this world, and I really value that and want to keep living. That's why it inspires me. Well, of course, Ukraine inspires me. Well, every expedition is It's something, it's hard to explain. I don't have enough cognitive ability to explain just how inspiring it is.
What scares you?
What scares me? Scares me? Scares me. I have a lot of thoughts in my head, and they constantly live on their own. So sometimes they scare me. They come up with something, scare me with something, and then leave. And I'm like, why did you even come? So what really and truly scares me the most are my very own thoughts.
What helps you hold on during the tough moments in life?
Food. I hold on to it. If everything is truly bad, I often think about... Just 5 days ago, I was vividly thinking about a delicious piece of halloumi cheese, generously seasoned with fragrant oregano and a drizzle of olive oil. Or I have tomatoes at home that my mom picked. They're just perfect. If everything is bad, you think about food and everything gets better.
What is the main goal or mission of your life?
My mission, my life's overarching mission, is truly very simple. It is to allow people to perceive and understand this vast world more broadly through the incredible medium of food. Or, to be more precise, not just the expansive world of food more broadly, but to truly see that the entire world itself is much more kinder, more positive, simpler, and indeed tastier. And that is my true calling, to genuinely help, well, to truly serve people. I think it's something like that. I'm truly ready to do whatever people want. For me, that's the most important thing.
If you had to choose just 3 words that really and truly characterize Ukrainians, what would they be?
Sincerity, generosity, love of freedom, borshch. That's 4. Sincerity, generosity, love of freedom, borshch.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You were recently in Japan, as I saw on social media. And Japan is truly one of those remarkable nations from whom, in my considered opinion, we should certainly learn this very delicate balance between cherished tradition and deep-rootedness and also modernity. Did you ever notice, and in general, what do you think? How do the Japanese people really manage to... And do they manage it? Because I haven't personally been to Japan, I truly don't know, but from your valuable experience, do the Japanese people manage to successfully balance between their cherished tradition, their deep-rootedness, and modern life, and how exactly do they manage to achieve this?
It seems to me that their overall structure is like this, you see. That their deeply rooted and cherished traditions somehow, in a natural and evolving manner, organically developed and thrived. Through their traditions, they do everything else. Here, if you live here, we have traditions, but there's digital, television, everything trendy, cars, a Tesla. And then you come in and someone is sitting at the table, all old-fashioned, in an embroidered shirt with a pot of borshch. And then someone is singing. And you're like, well, this is kind of, here. If they were driving a Tesla and singing, maybe that would make some sense. It turns out that we always drag this competition of ours along. We take the conservative or archaic things and try to stick them onto how the world is developing. And that's probably not quite right, but for them, it's an organic mix. Everything is just like that. And their traditions are like that. They don't have this thing where they walk the streets, for example, to see some traditions, how they look, their clothing, for instance. So you can walk down a street in Japan and see a bunch of people just dressed in everyday clothes. It's not traditional clothing, it's just something kind of unusual. And really, there are a lot of things like that. These traditions, in my opinion, it's like... It's not a deep analysis, of course. Let's not really say it's deep, but overall they've just built their world quite differently. And if there's a truly magical world, it's absolutely and indeed theirs. Because, look, just one example, they don't have trash bins or litter on their streets. Because at some point in time, they truly thought this way. If there are no trash bins, you'll know there aren't any on the street, and you won't throw trash away. You walk out of a cafe and leisurely drink some coffee, knowing full well there will be a convenient trash bin available. However, they do not walk out because they are acutely aware there simply won't be one. And this fundamental difference profoundly changes the entire approach to how public spaces are utilized. Can you imagine such a different approach? And you're like, wow, that's how they are about everything. We don't do this because we don't need it. We do it like this, like this, like this. And then everything works. Well, I don't know how to explain it to you. That's just how everything is for them. And really, no matter what area you look at, everything works like that for them. For example, there are traffic lights. You have to wait 1 minute and 40 seconds. So you stand there for half an hour, those 3 slopes already make you feel bad, and there you have to wait 1 minute and 40 seconds. That's 3 times longer. But it creates a different kind of flow, it solves the transportation issue. And look, everything is super organized there. Because, you know, if a restaurant is open until precisely 9 o'clock, at 8:59, they come up and rather abruptly say, please, you absolutely must get up and leave right now. And you're like, what exactly is this all about? We work until 9, you have 1 minute, you shouldn't be here anymore. At first you might take it as aggression, but then you realize that if they agreed on 7:30, they'll be there at 7:30. So I'm like, wait, you can actually do that? If it's set for 7:30, everyone knows they have to be there at that time. And if you need to leave in 1 minute, you leave in 1 minute. You can't stay in the restaurant until 9:05. That's it, you're gone, you're not there anymore. So it turns out that everyone there understands this, everything is organized, and that's how it all works. And it's like, wow! And the traditions too. They continue to keep practicing them, because it's just an integral part of their everyday life. It's not at all separated from their fundamental reality.
Well, actually, traditions and the deep-rootedness and profound connection to them are just one of the many important values. And obviously, every single nation has its own unique set of different values. And for the Japanese, I guess things just developed in such a way that their culture turned out like this. And what's interesting, actually, from the perspective of popularizing this culture and its culinary traditions, and in general, we all know anime. A lot of people watch anime and those same characters.
Anime is anime for us, but for them it's just a cartoon.
But they actually popularized it as a style all over the world.
They just watch it, and there's really nothing particularly special about it. For us it's anime, but for them it's just quite normal. And it's not like anime is something they specifically invented. It's simply an essential part of their culture. They watch anime every day, that's it, and they share this world.
So, almost everything that we currently know about Japan is probably just an assumption. For example, the popular image of samurai in their culture isn't exactly the same as it was in historical reality. Or, for instance, consider modern cartoons, anime, or even delicious sushi, their traditional dishes. Probably. Again, it's just an assumption. Probably it became so popular in the world primarily because in Japan itself, it's the very foundation of their culture to the fullest extent. Yes, that's
in this, and they don't... There isn't such a thing that... We've revived some imaginary dish called mandryky. It's like dumplings, and then we go out into the world and show off mandryky. And they're like, we typically eat a cabbage salad, for example, as a common dish. In Japan, they'll show cabbage salad, and that's what they show. We just try to show the very best of what we have, and they just show what they have. Anime isn't even their best thing. They just show you whatever comes to mind. And that's it. You're like, can you do that? And you're like, well, when guests come over, are you really going to show them this? I often come to some production site and say, let me share the production. No, we haven't cleaned up yet. And I'm like, I don't need it to be cleaned up. And actually, it's empty. Like, you can't, it's just how we are. You show only the best, you show it off. Even if everything else is dirty and messy, you'll make this table spotless and lay it out nicely. How can I show it when it's dirty? For us, that's just part of who we are. We need to... Borshch, it's the best, it's already polished. Perfect, well, then look at it. But what about just bread with a piece of salo? No one talks about it, no one says it should be shown. And they say, what about bread with a piece of salo? Clearly, it's a carb with a piece of salo. They dry it, that's also rice, it's like a carbohydrate. It's just that they don't have bread, so they like, if we didn't have bread, we'd eat rice too. And if we put salo on top of rice, we'd show it to the world too. Everyone would show it off like, wow. That's what they do. They put fish on rice and say, wow. And we're like, bread with a piece of salo, what's there to show off about that? And for us, it's truly hard. We simply can't do that because it's absolutely not the best approach. But they're like, this is entirely ours. We don't even need to say whether it's the very best or not. Just take it. And that's a completely different philosophy. So imagine, wherever you go in the world, there are restaurants where the only thing is bread with salo. Look, there are different kinds of salo. different kinds of bread. Just a small mental difference like that.
So first and foremost, and maybe this sounds like a cliche, you need to put your own house in order and understand yourself. And really, when it comes to traditions and rootedness, you need to sort all that out in your own mind and then go out into the world with that.
Yes, that's exactly how it truly is. That's the only way it genuinely works. And that's precisely why now, when so many people have indeed gone abroad and they wanted to open Ukrainian establishments, but they don't know what to build there. Well, because, what do you even serve in a Ukrainian restaurant? And what is Ukrainian cuisine anyway? And no one there? Everyone runs into the problem. Okay, there's borshch, vareniki, pampushki, halushki, and salo. But what comes next? Holopsi, daruni, but then what? And you start searching because you just don't have that in your head. Who do you not eat? At home here, you don't eat pampushki? But to everyone in the world, you serve borscht with pampushki. And I'm like, so what's the point then? I mean, why serve borscht with pampushki if you don't actually eat them like that here? Well, because that's the right way. And you're like, what's right about it? I wish it were like that. Well, if you don't eat them, then don't serve them. And when was the last time you made it at home? Well, I haven't in a year. So how can you say you eat it and show it to the world? Well,
So at its core, it's about what's inside.
But that's the process we're going through in our country right now. So here, it's good that we're talking about this.
What stage are we currently at, in your opinion? I mean, in percentage terms, on this path, on this journey to the exact point where we can truly say, yes, we genuinely understand who we are?
30 years, well, maybe another 25 or so. How many? Well, by 2050, God willing, we'll have what we want. Unfortunately, well, that's usually how all changes happen. It takes 20 years for a generation to grow up with this. And then it will become, like avocado. Avocado is now absolutely normal. It appeared somewhere around 2010. Well, about 15 years have passed and avocado has become the norm. But that's because business, its popularization around the world, a lot of advertising, business sells it, and that's kind of a super accelerated process. So, for example, if everyone talked about mandryky, if everyone in the world talked about mandryky, if we talked about mandryky, if those mandryky were being sold, then maybe we would need like 10 years too. But if it's not such a hot topic, then it takes more time. So it turns out that for mandryky to become popular, for our culture to become even bigger and more widely used, everyone around needs to talk about it. Then it would take 10 years. Otherwise, it takes about 25 years.
In recent years, a significant number of Ukrainians have gone abroad to other countries. Some have already returned, some have stayed there and are building their lives. In fact, actually, there have been numerous waves of significant emigration since the 19th century. The fact that so many Ukrainians have now left their homeland in relation to our cherished traditions, to this very deep-seated rootedness, is that truly a significant plus or a definite minus for the nation? Are we losing something this way, or are we actually going to discover and understand something new?
Well, this is a truly significant topic for many hours of detailed discussion. But to put it quite simply, the diaspora who actually left in 1960, there was a very big first wave then. Then in the 1950s there was a rather large wave, and then the second really big wave was in the early 1990s. Although these two waves took that culture with them and preserved it there. So basically, the people who left in the 60s left with their culture and they preserved it. They froze it in time, and that's a good thing. Those who left in the 90s also took a bit of culture with them, just a little, not much anymore, and they preserved it there. And now when you go there, it's as if nothing has changed since 1990. So that the people have left now, you have to ask them, what did they left with? That's something to ask about. I think that what they left with, that's what they'll preserve. And what did they take with them? And so I think it seems to me that they won't preserve anything. Ask about all the holidays. Now a process has begun of a true revival, and everyone is talking about it now. Can you imagine a person who left in March, in early 2022, and now it's already 2025. Just imagine, in a mere 3 short years, how much we've truly accomplished and grown. How much Ukrainian music, every day, every week, about 400 Ukrainian songs are released. How many books we truly have, how many profound meanings we possess, even what we are actively doing right now, We are deeply talking about the very essence of the nation's archetypes, about its fundamental values, about its core identities, about its rich mythology, about its distinctive food, about its traditional clothing, about its unique styles. All of this is constantly simmering. We earnestly argue. We proudly put up Shevchenko, the vibrant yellow one. Everyone is passionately arguing. Someone genuinely says it's good. These are collective processes that need to be felt, like when all the kids went out to protest, but they're not really kids. And you feel that this is a completely different group of people with their own values, their own approaches. This is being formed completely. These are traditions, cultures. A lot of people travel to different places, like I go on expeditions. I used to travel quite a bit before, and now I travel even more often. And it's all alive, and right now we're welding it all together, shaping it. And just imagine a person who hasn't been in Ukraine, say, since 2022 comes here. It would just be a vast chasm. Do you truly know what latex fauna is, or do you really know what this particular thing or that specific item is? And they're like, no, they don't. I say they know about okeanelzi, because when they arrived, they were told there had been okeanelzi. And it's good that they know about okeanelzi. But now Dahabracha and okeanelzi are something everyone knows. But even more so, like even among Ukrainians. But what else is there to know? About these 15 Ukrainian performers? They're like, no. Everyone's like, we've basically heard enough of them, and they're like, seriously? So, well, what is this? And the same will certainly and indeed happen with the traditions. They'll just come and be utterly and truly shocked. They'll end up in such a vacuum. They are quite the representatives of the so-called third big wave, as they call it, the third significant wave of the diaspora in all the various cities. But the third wave of the diaspora will probably be the very smallest overall in terms of its cultural impact. Because they didn't bring it with them, they'll be talking about little things, such as beautifully embroidered shirts, just precisely what they knew as of March, and that's pretty much exactly how it's going to be, more or less. Unfortunately, that is the situation. Well, but what can you really do? When Italians emigrated up until the early 20th century, they consistently brought their cherished traditions with them. Not just their cultural traditions, but also the delicious food they habitually ate at home, which was a significant part of their identity. That's what they took with them and brought over there. And that's what is called Italian cuisine. And that's why it became cool and fashionable around the world. And so the Chinese cuisine, it's the same thing, a great migration. And they didn't invent anything new, they just did things the way they always had. And that's culture. But we arrived and we're like, was it the Soviet Union or was it my grandmother who made Olivier salad? And you're left truly wondering, with a deep sense of perplexity, exactly how this unexpected and unwelcome enemy managed to infiltrate and become a part of our cherished tradition. It's almost as if someone has completely brainwashed you, and yet the long-standing tradition is undeniably present, and you genuinely do celebrate Christmas, Easter, everyone enthusiastically breaks the fast, and then, quite surprisingly, there's the ever-present Olivier salad. What are you doing here? Olivier salad? A French word? How did you end up there? You don't belong there. And so you go abroad and proudly say, look, here it is, delicious pascha, savory baked ham, and a delightful Olivier salad. And everyone asks, is this your tradition? You say yes. And then you sit there thinking, not exactly. Well, it's kind of, that's why I think it's a really huge, big question. Well, what then? That's the question, and that's it. What are we? We need to talk about what we're doing right now. What you're doing, what I'm doing, what a lot of people are doing, to create content, to establish a foundation, to popularize, to discard some things that aren't needed, that don't catch on, and to build those values so that when they arrive, all three waves of the diaspora, me included, they can come and see for themselves. Like, wow, this is Ukraine, this is what I dreamed of, now I know for sure this is mine. I could never understand it before, but now I do. Well, then it will be awesome.
Well, actually, this was the fundamental problem with Soviet rule, with Russian rule, which kept Ukraine in subjugation for such a very long time. They systematically replaced both cherished traditions and distinctive dishes, and they deliberately created a kind of artificial substitution meant to deeply get into people's minds and completely erase what was truly their own unique heritage. And now we urgently need to meticulously clean it off, much like restoring a valuable painting.
Well, I think that's exactly where the core issue truly lies. We can clearly and distinctly see the tangible and impactful results of all their dedicated and diligent work. Perhaps now, the powerful Muscovy and the vast empire can simply sit back, relax, and observe the unfolding events with keen interest. Now we are looking at the results of our own work.
Thank you.
Thank you too.
Now it's time for the artifacts segment, where we ask our guests to leave something as a memento of themselves. Yevhen Klopotenko is known for creating delicious dishes, not just interesting, but truly tasty ones. And on his website, there are also many interesting, beautiful, and delicious recipes. And you also have a format of so-called dinners, during which you prepare special dishes, for example, connected with mythical heroes, mythical characters. So, especially for our episode, I decided to ask you to create a special recipe, as well a recipe for rootedness. So, the recipe for rootedness from Yevhen Klopotenko. I am now giving you a fresh piece of paper and a pen to use right now.
The truly complete recipe for rootedness.
Since we have not just a video format, but also a podcast where people listen to us, so then I'll ask you to comment as you go.
Okay. We take our parents. Next. We take our parents. We take our cherished memories. We take our deepest, most profound, sincere desires, and then we add to them the emotional anchors, and then we carefully integrate our expansive vision of the future. First, we thoughtfully consider our parents, our cherished memories, and our deepest desires. We then meticulously put it all into a metaphorical pot, thoroughly mix it all together really well, and finally season it generously with those powerful emotional anchors. This means that, let me explain what that means. And when we decorate it with thoughts about the future, this means that our memories, the memories of our parents, and desires, in fact, we truly need to recall what we have really liked throughout our own lives and how it is connected to our parents. If we don't know, then maybe what our parents told us, even our parents' memories, are things we like, what we enjoy. Then we meticulously figure out precisely what it is that I truly want. And we carefully combine all of these distinct elements into a single cohesive unit. And then we thoughtfully add an emotional anchor. This profoundly means that I genuinely want to be wearing a comfortable skirt on those special green holidays. Well, I mean, whether I'm a girl or a guy, it doesn't matter. It's some kind of emotion that you really like. You imagine yourself. You really need to attach some genuine emotion to your memories, your parents and you and your deepest desires, and then when you truly have these emotions, it's like eagerly anticipating your birthday. You have to look forward to some significant event or some wonderful thing, and in the end, you subtly shift it a little into the future. This means it can also profoundly influence your own future or the future of your people, everything that truly matters.
Thank you very much. We will probably post this wonderful recipe via a convenient link below the video. Friends, please do use this amazing recipe and kindly share your valuable impressions of what you heard, what you saw, and in fact, how much this particular recipe truly helped you feel deeply rooted in your own life.
Thank you. Enjoy your meal, everyone.
Friends, today in our studio we had Yevhen Klopotenko, a well-known chef, restaurateur, creative entrepreneur and promoter of Ukrainian cuisine. Write in the comments what interesting things you learned for yourself. Do you think that rootedness is one of the important values inherent to the Ukrainian people? Did you enjoy this episode? Write to us. Let me remind you that you can watch episodes of the Archetype of the Nation project on YouTube and listen on your favorite podcast platforms. And read them on the website magicworld.com.ua. In particular, there you will find popular science essays prepared by folklorist Marina Demediuk, as well as recordings of folklore works performed by well-known actors. Thank you for your attention and goodbye.